All right, so let's take a look here. We're gonna do a little bit of a draw over and see what we can do. Um, just gonna lighten this up, lock both those down, throw on a new color here. So hopefully this will be easy enough to see. Blue line. All right, so first of all, great work getting three very different poses going. They've got three really different looks to them, and I think there is a good amount of variety here. I just kind of want to talk you through a little bit through some of your drawing choices. Which will hopefully help you not only improve your rough sketching and your sketching in general, but also help you as you get ready to move into the line work. So I'll talk about all three of them and kind of let you know what I like about them, what doesn't work so well for them, etc. And then it'll give you a good idea of what you need to do to improve this sheet, the rough sheet. And then once that's done, then we can move on to doing your final line work. So, obviously, some of these things that I may talk about are design choices, which certainly you can leave or take, for the most part, but other things will be more functional. So, just try to sift through what I've said and try to take what is the most applicable and what's going to be the most helpful for you. So, let's see, starting off, I guess the easiest thing to do is probably just start off right at the top. So, I think what we've got going on for the hair right here, I think works pretty well. We kind of almost got like this beehive old style, but made out of what I assume is either braided hair or some kind of dreads. It's very visually interesting. I know you've got these kind of long tendrils here because it's a part of your story. It's a part of your narrative. So we just want to make sure that this hair that's alive, that's very expressive, um, makes sense, or is those lines that it creates are very visually appealing. So think about the shapes that they're making. I would go for something, I don't know what's the word, a little bit more fluid. Right now they're a little bit floaty, they're a little bit like tentacles, which is probably more creepy than it is attractive or stylish. So think about the kind of line that you use. Think about how you can give it a nice soft appearance, how it can have a fluidity to it that is expressive and more attractive. Certainly having this kind of a line, or having a creepy kind of meandering line might be good for some characters, more of like maybe a villainous character, but definitely for any of the protagonists you might want to be careful for having those tentacle like looks to them. I would go with something that's very clear, and clear is going to be more forthright and probably is going to come across as much more appealing. So, we've got, this nice long line, if they're angry, or if they're, being logical or something, being very square. It's all very intentional. The creepy meandering tentacle, I just don't think is going to work very well. So that's something you probably will want to look at. Coming in here to the face. Now it's just a rough sketch, so I don't expect this stuff to be immaculate. That is where the final line drawing is going to come in. You got a couple extra lines here that you don't need. And this line here is really broken up. I'd probably just come in here, do the right pen stroke. Now, if his head is tilted down, which is what it looks like you're doing, because you've got the ears up high, that's fine, and that is going to bring these eyebrows down. But again, try to like think through the structure of all of this stuff. So there's, a certain amount of symmetry that's taking place. Um, as much as you can. And that's right, make sure you leave a little gap there at the bottom for the eyelid. Now think about your center line coming down the face. So, you can express the lips over to the side, but structurally they're still going to need to be somewhat centered. So what I tend to do is I just go ahead and just draw the mouth, in that center position first, get that figured out, and then if they're kind of pulling to the side, go from that base point. That tends to work out the best for me, at least. Again, make sure, especially in your line drawing, you get in here and you start looking at some anatomy reference to make sure that all of your structures read really well. I'm going to be very picky about everybody's structures in that final line drawing. So really make sure that all of the anatomy is really solid too. Now, typically the break in the jaw does come at the mouth, but if we are tilting upwards, then that break in the jaw is also going to be a little bit higher. So come in at the eye, come down. Usually I try to bring it back out for wherever my chin is going to be. Keep that in mind. Also, make sure you've got something for sideburns too. Otherwise, the ears, they kind of end up looking funny. So a couple things about the face. You get into a lot of this stuff now. A lot of this, it's not final line work, which is fine, but some of it's a little unclear and just needs to be shored up a little bit, even for a rough sketch. So remember, a rough sketch is designed to help you communicate your ideas. It's designed to sell it for final production, which means it's going to need to have a basic amount of structure. Now he's turned slightly to the side, so whatever this pouch is that's here, I'm going to expect to see at least a little bit of the side of the pouch. So there's a little bit of depth there. So consider your perspective in here. Same with some of this. Some of these structures are just not quite clear enough for me to really make out what's going on. So if this is supposed to be a pouch with a flap, think about contour. Think about how all of these elements push out to make it clear what this shape is supposed to be. Same for the pouch here, all of that stuff. Now, moving into our shoulders here. Now you get a real tricky pose going on, anatomically speaking. These arms being arched way back. So, try to find a picture if you can to reference. That's always going to be the best thing. We can go in here and we can dissect this out a little bit. So, we're going to have the pectoral, but the arm is way up. So this pectoral is going to be coming up really high up here into the deltoid. Remember, the deltoid is like a chain, so this is going to be our bicep in this area. Then we're going to have the tricep back here and then coming in. So you probably are going to need to have a little bit more reference here for the back of the arm. A little bit more of a structure back there. Remember, our rib cage is coming in here, and then the rest of the armpit is made from the latissimus dorsi, which is going to be, stretching way back up here. That's what gives us our actual armpit structure. So these sleeves would be, because of how low that you've gone and drawn them, would be crazy voluminous. I mean, they would be just super, super, super baggy. So you might think about tightening those up a little bit. They just, in a relaxed position, they're not going to make quite as much sense. So that's where, maybe down here you've got them and, they're looking nice because they help to break it. But that's what the rough drawing then is for, is then to refine that shape. And that means sometimes we have to exaggerate, like what we've done over here. Other times it means we got to pull back to make it a little bit more realistic. But we can still keep that stuff. Sometimes we can add little accoutrements, little secondary elements to help bring that back while still making sense structurally. So you're going to have a ton of fabric pulling and pooling. So this is obviously going to be your tension point right up in here. Let me say tension point is in here. It's way too bright of a green. Tension point is going to be up in here. So think about how this fabric is going to be really scrunching up here at the top. and how that's all going to be stretching and pulling and causing a lot of tautness here. Because if this shirt is tucked in down here at the bottom, then we're not going to get a lot of wrinkling down here. This is all going to be quite taut. So you're going to get. We've got the rib cage going here. It's going to taper in. He's a somewhat fit guy, so he probably is going to have his love handle about there, and that's just all going to be just taut. Maybe even get a couple pull lines going from there. Then from here, think about just how baggy this is. Since it's pulling really hard, it's going to have to pull back towards the armpit. So if this is the kind of the point of tension, where the fabric is pulling against the arm, which means we also have to think really a lot about how thick the fabric is. This is where it's all going to start kind of pulling back. So it's going to start pulling back there. It can only pull so much, and then it has to start, coming back towards the arm. So think through some of that. Best thing to do, as always, is to go find some reference, especially for this, or go take a picture of someone doing it yourself, so you can figure out exactly how those folds are. But don't, make sure you're conscious about how much extra material is here. If we need that silhouette a little bit more, that's where you kind of have these epaulets here. We could bring a couple more of those into here, and that'll help keep the width a little bit longer, but also make sense logically. All right, let's see. Let's go back to some structure. Don't want to lose my colors. RGB. Okay, so going now, with like so many things, we want to, as much as we can, avoid showing anything straight on, because when we do that, we limit ourselves to just 2 dimensions, when really we want all 3 dimensions. So we always want to optimize and push for a 3/4 view as much as we can. And something about the way these hands are, they feel very unnatural. They're very claw-like. So if we think about this is the top of the arm, that's the left, that's the right. We've got our wrist in here, then the back of the hands are going to be what is probably the most visible. You think about our joints all fitting into here. So we should probably see a lot more of some of these fingers in here, and they're probably going to make it look a lot more appealing. Also, what can help with that is this wrench. Is go ahead and let the wrench fall downwards a lot more. And and think about the wrench design too. Don't go with this. This is just a placeholder. This is not super great. But this and this should have a cultural design to them. They don't. It's not that you don't need to reinvent the hammer, but there should be something somewhat unique about them. There should be something that kind of sets them apart. It's an opportunity. You have something that has been crafted within that culture. You can really think about something that might be special. Even just think about this, like you have all of this wrapping up here for the hair. What if the tools also have a wrapping on them? If you've ever seen like a Japanese sword and you look at the hilt, it has that very beautiful weaving that is a part of the grip. So what if they had that as well on their tools? Like you look at our modern tools, we either don't have anything on them or we put rubber on them, and that's something very industrial and very specific to us. So maybe, of course, they need to be able to grip their tools as well, but instead they use fibers and things like that, like you would have with a Japanese sword, or some kind of braided. Thinking of those bracelets, those paracord bracelets, something like that. Brings in that extra level of detail. But as far as the this handle goes, or as far as the wrench goes, make sure you're really conscious of its angle to the hand. So, the plane of the hand is going back this way. So there can be a certain looseness here, so which I think is kind of what you're going for. You've got this looseness coming down. Well, that looseness has to be provided by some way, and usually it's provided by that first finger going slack. Then these other fingers coming back, and then they end up providing the majority of that support. So, show us these fingers, the more, by having those other fingers, you're explaining more of the anatomy, and you want to explain everything as much as you can because it helps the viewer to understand what is going on. So really think through showing the perspective of things. Now, does it make everything harder? It makes everything way harder. Showing front views, back views, and profiles is infinitely easier, which is why when we do model sheets, that's what we tend to do, is because we're really just trying to get through the position of everything. But for what will eventually need to be used by 3D modelers, especially since that's how the vast majority of animation goes, or to be used as a reference for future illustrations, you need depth really bad. So think through some of that stuff. Same goes for over here. Now, moving down here, let's go back to figuring out some of this anatomy. Remember, it's always really important to plot your anatomy. I just do it on a separate layer, so it makes it easy. I didn't do that here because I'm just critiquing. But when I build my stuff, I always build all my anatomical figures out first. So think about, we've got the rib cage in here. That's going to lead to our abdomen. We've got those love handles in here. Love handles. Then we're going to have the groin. And then, you get these curved areas. This is where you're going to get your femurs. You're going to get the rest of your structures going. Now, as far as this goes, you go for your iliac crest. And, that's going to start on the outside, and it's going to come to the inside of the knee. Again, start the inside, come to the inside of the knee. Then you've got quad, you've got your abductor. And the center region here in the crotch is what I'm primarily concerned about, because I want to understand how these fabric folds are all supposed to be working, as well as the length here. I'm looking at how long these legs are. Now, he's got like these what seem like giant platform shoes, which is probably a very intentional design choice on your part, um, which is fine. I'm looking through this. I think the biggest thing here is that there's just way too much distance here underneath for where these hips are supposed to be. Even if we bring the pelvis all the way down here, bring it down there. We've got the glutes underneath, and we've got some hamstrings, and we've got some hamstrings. It's just too much fabric down here. Even if these pants are supposed to be loose, it just wouldn't make any sense when he stands up. Even if they're like drop crotch pants and they were supposed to be, almost have like a Middle Eastern flair to them, these bands completely mess that up because they would need to connect more at the knee to give it that almost like that Aladdin type feel. So still isn't going to totally work for that either. So I'm going to treat these more like normal pants. And think through how if he's squatting here, he's going to have a lot of these twisting, radiating fabric folds. There's probably going to be some bunching here on the side as well. And you also got to be conscious that there's going to be some fabric pinching as it goes into these straps here as well. That might cause some kind of interesting bunching taking place. Then everything is going to pull towards the knee because the knee is the next tension point. So especially sitting like this or kind of squatting down, that is pulling pulling in this direction against those knees. Um, so for the most part, all of that is going to be pretty tight. Um, Now you kind of have this interesting spiral swishing going on, like they're longer on the outside than they are on the inside. Um, you're going for a mechanic here. I don't know if it's the best choice, and it doesn't make a ton of sense. But I think what's getting the feeling of what you're wanting is something like a cuffed pant. The cuffed pant, something that might tuck into a boot or cuff around a boot in order to keep stuff out of the boot, keep the mess out. It looks like a mechanic, so he's going to be dealing with all sorts of, gross and dangerous things. So, keeping stuff out of the way is going to be important. So what I would probably do is, keep your boots the way that they are. Go ahead and let the top of the boots be shown. Show off your straps. And then from there, right up above it, go into a, a cuffed pant. Then from there, then you can have, all of this fabric or whatever coming out. Now you also have pockets like way down on the calves, almost kind of on the left side of the calves. If there's going to be pockets there, I would keep them very small. Keep them really minimal. You wouldn't want to be carrying a ton of weight, like way down in your calves. It would swing really weirdly, and it wouldn't make much sense. Which also means if you're going to have pockets on here, you're definitely going to have pockets up here on your thighs. And you've already got, strapped bands, which would be designed really specifically for someone who doesn't already have pockets. So you may want to pick one or the other, logistically. Either have actual like cargo pants where it's all built in, or have more of the straps um, going on like this. Also, with straps, you can't tie a strap around your leg by itself. It has to have some kind of supporting structure. So you may also think about having some additional straps here on the side as they come connect to the belt, because the belt is what's going to be carrying that weight. And if there's a little bit of a bend here, you may even get a little bit of a almost like a little bit of a slack um, in some of that strap as well. So look at leg holsters. Leg holsters that'll help too and go a long way. Now it looks like you've got these platform shoes on here. So you've got top of the foot, back of the heel, toes, all in this structure. And so you've got all of this extra space. So I don't know what the motivation is necessarily. I don't know if he's short and he's just super conscious about his height. I don't know if they're constantly walking in like fluids of some kind, and so that's actually to elevate their feet out of the water a little bit. I don't know if it's because these are tech oriented, and so there's all sorts of like magnets or something that's going on in there. Bunch of technology. I don't know if they're spring loaded. I don't know if they're jet packs or jet boots or whatever. But you're going to need to find some way of explaining why they are the way that they are, to make it somewhat more clear why they're platform shoes. Why is he wearing them? So think through that. And make sure that's clearly communicated. And then once you get into the line work, then you can also start thinking about like badges or emblems or markings. uh, Depending on if is he just a street mechanic, maybe he wouldn't have these things. If he's part of some organization, there's probably some kind of branding or things like that that you would also want to consider. All right, next one. So this pose is very dynamic, but it's also not my favorite pose. He kind of looks like he's like a monkey. He's going like, "Woo." He's making. He looks like he's almost making fun of someone, which also means this face doesn't make much sense. That the expression isn't right for what he's doing. Now this has a nice feel to. I like the pose in this one, and it has a nice kind of attitude. It's got this backward lean to it. He's pointing upwards in a very like Socratic way. So he feels smart and wise, but also very relaxed and carefree. So there's a lot communicated in here, probably much more than one or three. So this is probably the pose that I like the best, and I would go with this one. But there's definitely some things that we can still do to fix it up. So just like how we had over with this face, and we were talking about adding depth, I think I would really want the same thing with this face. So he's got his chest facing out in this direction. I think it'd be fun to have his face turn back just a little bit more into a 3/4 going this way. So he's really kind of looking back. Um, I think that could be a lot more fun. It would also give us a little bit more depth, and we'd be able to get a little bit more of the ear shown as well. So consider the 3/4. It's not a 3/4. It's not that strong. But also, man, it lets you get that strong sternocleidomastoid in there, which is going to be really nice. So think about that. Make sure you plot the top of the cranium as well, the back of the head. So think about that for your anatomy. Now we've got pectoral, rib cage, going down, got all of that. Love handle, bottom of the groin, so leg. So that's all feeling good. It's all making sense for the most part. Avoid square shoulders. It's like a very common thing, unless they're wearing straight up like shoulder pads, because it's some kind of like really structured blazer. Typically, it's not going to be that harsh, even with like a stitching or something. So let that come and fall down. You're still going to have a couple kind of folds going on in there. Maybe even one down here at the bottom, and then come around and then make your sleeve. So avoid those super sharp corners. Even then, if I do something like a blazer, I'm gonna make sure, because the blazers are thick, they're a really thick material. You're gonna have to kind of show how that's all sewn together, and kind of help show and sell some of that thickness that you're dealing with. So keep that in mind as well. Make sure that straps don't get too thick. They can add a ton of bulk and can end up looking way too heavy, because it'll end up looking like he's wearing a 100-pound sash. And it'd just be crazy heavy. So be careful of stuff like that. This arm. Okay, so deltoid over. Okay, so that's capping here. So that means our bicep is in this region. Tricep is back here. Now right now it looks like the elbow is pointing forward rather than back, and that's because you can't get. I'm posing this myself. You cannot get the back of your hand on the front of your thigh the way that it is without pushing the elbow super far forward. Like, physically try to do that yourself, and you'll see that's really awkward. So I can see you thinking through the anatomy, because you know that you got your flexor and extensor that you need to worry about here. But we need this hand to be forward facing. So I would just bring the hand here in a much more natural style. That's the side of his coat here. A lot of times you won't even see the thumb because it'll get tucked behind. So think about how that hand is sitting on the hip. If you don't like it down, you could also go up. Get that little pinky in there as well. So again, I like to try to explain as much of the anatomy as I can, and then you can come in here and get the fold and the wrinkle and the cuff. Get all of that stuff in there. That's going to make a lot more sense than what we currently have. This one is seeming fine for the most part. Maybe get a little bit more of a definition to the deltoid here, um, and a little bit more of a curvature there for the bicep because his arm is compressed. So we have a squash. Wrist here, maybe a little bit more of a bulge. So it defines the anatomy a little bit more, a little bit sharper for the elbow, then come back. And then you may, since he's crunching up his arm, you may get some wrinkles there and there as well. So keep that in mind. I've lost my system here. So some fabric folds and some fabric folds. Probably going to have some fabric folds in here. Going to have some fabric folds in there. Long tunics like this, they can definitely just pull straight down without a lot of folds in them. Especially his legs are kind of out, so it's pulling it even a little bit more taut. So don't feel like you have to over explain it. I do like what you're insinuating down here at the bottom. There's like this cuff here. While this guy makes me feel like summer because of the short sleeves that we've got going on, this guy makes me feel much more like cold weather. So I can almost imagine this coat with like a large, I don't know what's the right word, corduroy or like knit, like sweater material. Just something thick, um, something that would be like weighted down, kind of keep you warm. And I do like how you've incorporated that in multiple places throughout the design, which is good. You might even bring it up here to the collar. Get it on all of the edges. Then again, same thing here. Really get some reference for some pants, for like some jeans or something, and kind of see how this stuff acts. If it is supposed to be like long in the front or long on the side, that's fine. But there's still these fabric folds need to make some kind of structural sense to how they're working. Like this feels doughy. It really doesn't feel like fabric that's pooling and looping. Remember your seven fabric folds, and go back and revisit those. And don't forget, if you like the cuff idea from this one, you could definitely bring that over to this one. Do the same thing with all your pouches. We talked about that. And again, try to, play with some of the fingers a little bit to help you show off that anatomical knowledge, show off what you understand. It's going to make your work really stand out, and that's what we have to do. Like as artists, we got to show off. We gotta show off. The hand's really big. I shrunk down the other hand to make it more proportion to the face. Now they could have a really big glove. That's a stylistic thing. If you've ever seen like Fable from Lionhead Studios, the now defunct Lionhead Studios, they had huge gloves, like massive gloves, because they really wanted to exaggerate the silhouette of the hand. That's fine. Just make sure that you communicate that really well in the thickness of the fabric, so people really understand that the fabric is like an inch thick leather. It was like taken off a building-sized rhino. It's like dragon hide or something. Then the last thing with this middle figure is the hair. I like the hair. I like the idea of the hair. But it's just not doing a whole ton for the silhouette. So I'm trying to figure out like what is the best thing to do. I think if we could push it a little bit, maybe a little bit to the side. So we've turned our head here to this 3/4 view. I wonder if we can play that up too with the hair. So we've got this hair, the hair, and then allow that hair to come out and kind of come back more and really show the structure and show a little bit of the variety of the hair. I think by turning it, we'll get the depth that it needs as well. So this way, it's not just a head with like this big halo or lump or Bob Ross fro behind it, even though I see that it's braids. It just structurally, it's, it's not just a circle in front of another circle. And then we've got this little thing coming out front. They look a little bit like horns because they're really not reading like hair, especially with everything else being braided. I don't I don't know if it makes much sense to have them separate because it makes it feel like a different material because it's so different. So I think if you're wanting something to that effect, you might just kind of maybe just bring some braids out. So like all of these braids or these dreads, they're all pulled back, they're all kind of together in one mass. So you could have two of them rather than just tucking back nice and neat. Two of them here, they really come out. They're they come out to the front. They're not as pulled back. They have like a tautness to them or a spring to them that kind of keeps them more forward than the rest of all of that hair. Um, Make sure if they are braids, they're somewhat consistent going back. Um, but do something like that. I think that could go a lot farther and will be more consistent in your design as a whole. These were a little far off to the side. I feel like you're wanting them to feel really like lively, like that's a part of his personality. He's got these really attentive braids that are coming forward. So something a little bit like that. I think that's nice. And that also kind of gives you this. This is like his shape. He gets this kind of Oakley like shape. You can incorporate that into different places. You can incorporate that into lots of different things. It's a lot of these looping feelings. So good, excellent. So again, everything I said to this one still applies over here to this one as well, and same as we get here into the third. So we've got that beehive. Again, I would go not with the horns, go with the 3/4, not with the how it is here with the straight profile. It doesn't explain as much. So 3/4. The design of these two are very similar in their outfits. Um, it's the pants are mostly the same. He's just wearing his coat differently. So what I would do if I were you is I would come back and do more exploration with this third one. Think about how might the tunic itself be different. Maybe it comes here and then is actually cut. It's actually cut to reveal the front, so we only get a little bit here in the back. Maybe this tunic has no sleeves at all. It's totally sleeveless, and then he has some fabric bands, or maybe he wears wraps around his arms for whatever reason. Think through what is the function of this person, but get a little bit more variety. Maybe if he's got this tunic, it would be fun to also have him wear shorts. So visually, all the fabric stops right here, and then we get into some knees and some calves here, and then he's got these big old boots on. I don't know, like play with it. See what you could do. This one, it feels like you were really excited with this one. You push through to the second one, and then things were getting a little exhausting by the third. So go back with a new vision and see how you can play with this guy's outfit, and then apply some of those structural changes. Again, you can keep your line work, somewhat simple as you have it here, but I do think you need to communicate a little bit more structure, be a little bit more clean. The way that I think about line work is I don't want you really solving these kinds of problems while you're doing the line work. When you get to the line work stage, I really want you to focus on beautiful line work. So you get in here, and if you've got a thin line that tapers really well, then you can get that nice thick line up in front of it, and that junction there is just beautiful. It's just a gorgeous looking connection point. If I'm going over this line work here, I want everything to be absolutely perfect. Make sure I get all of those thicknesses right where they need to be. So that kind of precision, that's what I want you focused on that stage. And then, like I said, getting into those little details. So if he does have little, symbols or whatever, any kind of badges or, you know, markings, decals, all of that stuff. That stuff is then all figured out during that stage. You basically coming in, you're filling in that negative space. But overall, it's looking really great. You've got a ton of character and you've got personality, and personality goes a long way. So good work here. Keep that up, and I cannot wait for you all to be able to finish your characters and get them hung. It's going to blow people away. It really really is. It's going to be extremely impressive. And I'm really glad that we can all come together to kind of walk you guys through this process really, really clearly, really carefully, so you can just repeat it. Because when you're done and you know how this works and you know how to think through all of this stuff, you can just do it over and over and over and over again, and you can have an infinite number of characters and really build that portfolio. So, great work so far. More work to do, got some learning in, doing some improvements, and I can't wait to see your revisions. So do these revisions, make these changes, and then I'll approve that for you to be able to go on to your line work. Great job. Talk to you later.